Welcome, and thanks for joining me. Today we're going to tackle the South Kaibab Trail, then dart across the Tonto Trail and connect with the Bright Angel Trail. This is a fantastic rim-to-rim or rim-to-river day hike alternative for less seasoned but still capable hikers. On this morning, thanks to the early hour, frigid temperatures, and brutal wind chill, I had the shuttle all to myself. Well, except for the driver. This is the orange shuttle line, and it's the only way for park visitors to reach Yaqui Point and the South Kaibab trailhead by motor vehicle. Both the road and the parking area have been permanently closed to private automobiles since the 1990s, and we'll get to why in just a few minutes. Now, last year, I published my HDR Rim-to-Rim guide series. If you intend to hike anywhere within the canyon, it's essential viewing and includes bulletproof training, diet, and gear breakdowns. Those who have already watched that series may have noticed that it's a little bit lean on footage from some areas, including the Bright Angel Trail. We're going to fix that today. So consider this part 4 of my essential rim-to-rim video series. On this occasion, you'll notice that I had the trail essentially to myself. Well, almost to myself. Oh, no way. It just so happened that I got to spend some quality time with not one, but 2 herds of bighorn sheep while on the trail. Bighorns have always been one of my favorite animals. They're so effortlessly majestic, and they have a swagger that's all their own. These incredible animals survive in this beautiful but harsh landscape year-round, and they definitely deserve respect. That includes giving them plenty of space. There was just one problem. There wasn't much space to give. To my left was a cliff plummeting several hundred feet. To my right, a steep canyon wall. Wild animals always have the right of way on the trail, so I stopped to give the sheep time to decide where to go. And after the ram gave me a good sniff, trying to decide if I was a threat or not, the sheep decided to continue towards me. Naturally, I decided to back up, which was really the only option that I had. At which point the ram darted up the canyon wall before moving around me and back onto the trail. The ewes and kids, on the other hand, decided to wander right past me with varying levels of confidence. Now, I definitely don't advise ever coming this close to any wild animal. But thanks to our opposing directions of travel along an extremely narrow section of the South Kaibab Trail, I didn't see another option. You should normally give these animals a solid 25 yards of space or more, but on this occasion, I literally could not accommodate that guideline.
Yeah, I'm okay.
It was a very unique experience, which to my surprise would be partially repeated only a few hours later while hiking up the Bright Angel Trail with a completely different herd of sheep. Now, we'll get to that chapter of today's adventure soon enough, but first, we have several miles of spectacular trail to cover. The South Kaibab Trail offers some of the most glorious views of the canyon, courtesy of the spectacular ridgelines and drop-offs. But there are also very few resources along this trail, and unsurprisingly, that's a pretty problematic mix. Emergency rescues and recoveries occur throughout the canyon, but the South Kaibab Trail has a history of being the most hazardous of the 3 rim-to-rim trails, and the cliffs and ridges are only part of the reason. The Grand Canyon encompasses 5 separate climate zones, meaning that in a single 24-hour day, the canyon can be both brutally cold and unbelievably hot. Dehydration, heat stroke, and exhaustion are very real, potentially fatal concerns for people who attempt to hike anywhere within the canyon. But heat-related illnesses are also known for causing blindness, dizziness, confusion, and disorientation. I don't expect that many of you need me to explain why those symptoms can easily turn deadly near steep cliffs and ridgelines. Unlike the North Kaibab and Bright Angel trails, there is effectively no water for 7 miles between the Rim and Colorado River along the South Kaibab Trail. There's also essentially no shade for most of the day, no ranger stations, and no reliable emergency help except for one emergency phone that I'll show you later. Now, as I've said in my Rim to Rim series, I've made the climb out of the canyon using all 3 Rim to Rim trails. None of them are easy, and people often get into trouble regardless of their path in or out of the canyon. So take care not to underestimate any of these trails, but give some extra respect to the South Kaibab Trail. It's very easy to get drawn in by the breathtaking scenery and find that you've wandered too deep. And there are tons of people who overextend themselves, effectively rolling the dice on whether they can get out of the canyon under their own power. It's because so many people have lost that gamble that the Yaqui Point Road and the South Kaibab parking area have been closed to private vehicles for close to 30 years. In the 1990s, Grand Canyon search and rescue teams were stretched to their breaking point, trapped in a shiftless sequence of unrelenting rescues because hikers were continually overestimating their abilities and underestimating the canyon. Emergency incidents were out of control, and rescue personnel were in serious danger themselves because of the poor judgment of so many Grand Canyon hikers. I mean, what are you supposed to do? Someone's life is potentially on the line, and even if it's 100+ degrees, you've now got to try and locate them somewhere within this labyrinth of canyons and potentially administer first aid and possibly execute an emergency extraction. It was dangerous and completely unsustainable, and as a result, the Park Service was forced to do something to reduce the number of emergency incidents within the canyon, and more specifically along the South Kaibab Trail. Part of the solution was closing access to the South Kaibab trailhead, except by park shuttle. And you know what? It's worked pretty well for a good long while, at least until recently. Within the last few years, emergency incidents have begun skyrocketing again, reaching levels very near those that forced the closure of Yaqui Point and the South Kaibab trailhead to private vehicles in the first place. The most likely culprit? Social media culture and quote-unquote influencers who don't really know what they're talking about and are exploiting our parks and the public's booming interest in outdoor adventure by parroting BS tips and dangerous advice. Back in 2021, the influencer marketing industry was valued at more than $7 billion, and that figure is expected to exceed $70 billion by 2029. That kind of money can and has poisoned online advice, especially in an effectively unregulated industry. Now, I get the irony. I am an influencer, regardless of how much I dislike the title. But At Home in Wild Spaces is not like other channels. I could get a lot more followers and make a lot more money if I took every sponsorship deal, or made a spectacle of myself by dressing like a unicorn, or peddling BS best national park or quote-unquote must-do lists, and never said one word about personal responsibility. But I don't want success if it comes from damaging our precious parks and wild spaces, or, like some sleazy door-to-door salesman, peddling total bull hidden under a painted smile because that's what's trendy or rewarded by internet algorithms, which, by the way, are designed primarily to farm you for money, not to share quality information. There are great resources online, but they are easily lost in the seemingly endless sea of BS. Now, there's a chance that I'm wrong, but I am betting that there are millions of people who are tired of being lied to or exploited, who love our national parks and wildlands, who crave adventure, but just want information that you can trust. At Home in Wild Spaces is for you. So if you haven't done it yet, I hope that you'll hit subscribe and make sure to turn on notifications, because otherwise algorithms are going to decide what you should watch. And no algorithm has ever spent 1 second walking through the Grand Canyon. With the right information, some intelligent training, and a healthy respect for nature, there are few limits on what you can achieve in the backcountry. So let's discuss as we journey deeper and deeper into this sacred, one-of-a-kind landscape. If hiking the South Kaibab Trail, keep your eyes peeled for this sign, which marks the halfway point between the river and rim. It can be difficult to pace yourself in this vast landscape without reliable markers. I touch on this a bit in my other Grand Canyon videos, but 11 native tribes have a profound connection to the Grand Canyon. From the stories of their cultural origins, their ancestral home, to their equivalent of heaven, this is holy ground. And I've often thought of the line from the popular John Denver song, "You can talk to God and listen to his casual reply." There is a deep spirituality to this land, shared in common with all those that see more than rocks, vistas, and amusement. But people struggle to recognize that sacredness when they're suffering from exhaustion and have overextended themselves. Or, on the opposite side of the spectrum, are racing through the canyon chasing internet checklists and bragging rights. Approximately 1 mile from the sign marking the halfway point between rim and river, you'll reach the tip-off, which marks the final descent into the canyon's depths. The last time I was here, I was focused on reaching the rim, so I neglected to give you a proper tour. There are 2 bathroom facilities along the South Kaibab Trail, one at Cedar Ridge and one here at the tip-off. Some of the best advice anyone can give you about hiking in the canyon is to use these bathrooms when they are available to you. Now, in emergencies, you can dig a cat hole and do your business, but why would you want to, with facilities like this along the trail? You won't find any better bathrooms in the backcountry, so enjoy, and also remember to keep them clean. Near the toilets, you'll find the shade structure and emergency water collection. This is also where you'll find the only emergency phone along the South Kaibab Trail. If you need help and can't flag down a hiker, this phone is your only guarantee. On this occasion, I sadly didn't have time to hike down to the river, though I would have loved to. This was predominantly a family trip with my wife, young children, mother, and in-laws, few of which were ready for the demands of a 14-mile hike through the Grand Canyon. And since I've already spent a great deal of time on these trails, I could justify a 6-hour speed trek, though I wish I could have stayed longer and visited the river. We've kind of become the DoorDash generation. Now, that's the step beyond the microwave generation. Where previous generations didn't have time to cook a meal, now we don't even have time to go shopping for our microwave meals, unless we can do it in our underwear from our couch or our bed. We're just too used to having things delivered to us on our schedule. And I mean, that's why internet must-dos were created in the first place, to try and placate the microwave and DoorDash generations. But that mentality is poison when exploring wild spaces. Nature has absolutely nothing in common with internet culture or internet conveniences. It has its own ageless rhythm and flow. The only mindset or currency that matters on the trail is preparation and harmony with nature. You'll miss out if you rush. So, after taking a long, envious look at the Colorado River from the tip-off, I started making my way back towards the Tonto Trail junction when I ran into this group of hikers.
We think you're so good.
Well, thank you.
Some of us have done this, but like, even when you've done it, your stuff helps even more.
Thank you.
And did you just do it again right now?
No, today's kind of a light day. I'm just gonna go across.
His voice. That's his voice.
We watched your 3-part series. She sent it to all of us and watch this guy. He will give you a great view of what this is. And we're here because of that.
You guys made my day.
Good job. We're hiking the Grand Canyon rim to rim. South to north.
Because of your videos. We just saw all the 3-part series, so watch them because they're really informative.
They are. The history part's great. The tips are great. What to expect is great. It's very balanced information. Great.
Now, I've previously shared some of that exchange in a short video, and there have been some that suggested it was staged, and I definitely don't blame them. So much of the internet is just deceptive bull, and I've kind of already touched on that. But this was a completely unscripted, unplanned, genuine encounter with people I have never met before in my life.
1, 2, 3. No, it was like just everything about it.
It was
like the right
awesome.
balance of
Can you believe it?
information,
We almost just
beauty.
passed this guy.
And while I'm generally happy to pass by under the radar, it felt good to know that my videos are having the intended effect and helping people get the most from their wild spaces adventures. After chatting for a few minutes, we parted ways and I took off across the Tonto Trail towards Havasupai Garden, previously known as Indian Garden. The Tonto Trail itself runs for about 70 miles east to west within the Grand Canyon. There are no bathrooms or emergency facilities along the 4-mile stretch that connects the South Kaibab and Bright Angel trails, and cautions for other trails apply to the Tonto Trail as well. Try and limit travel to the morning and evening when temperatures are more moderate. Make sure that you have sufficient water and first aid, and limit travel to official trails and durable surfaces. There are a couple small springs along this portion of the Tonto Trail, so a filtration system is recommended as a precaution. Now, because you're less likely to see other people along the Tonto Trail, flagging down some help if you get into trouble might be a struggle. On this occasion, I only saw one other person, which was wonderful. It felt like I had the canyon to myself. But it was also a reminder to respect the canyon at all times. After 4 miles, the Tonto Trail meets up with the Bright Angel Trail north of Havasupai Garden. This is the oldest and most popular trail into and out of the canyon. This area in particular was once the home of a clan from the Havasupai tribe, hence the name, who lived and farmed here for centuries until they were kicked out in the early 1900s. Now, I can't speak to that wound or how descendants of those who were dispossessed feel, but changing the name from Indian Garden to Havasupai Garden is an attempt to recognize that injustice and honor the people who lived here for generations and those who still consider the canyon their home. With the exception of Phantom Ranch, Havasupai Garden offers the greatest concentration of amenities and resources within the canyon. There's shade, water, bathrooms, picnic tables, a ranger station, an emergency phone, and a campground. Make absolutely sure that everyone in your party, whether hiking rim to rim or not, is feeling well and has adequate water and food before leaving this oasis. From here, you have just under 4.5 miles and just over 3,000 feet of elevation gain before reaching the rim. The trail starts off gradual enough, but soon turns into miles of unrelenting switchbacks. This is an absolutely spectacular trail, and I'm glad that I get to compare and contrast both the Bright Angel and South Kaibab trails in the same video, while also sharing some solid intel on how to select the path that's best for you. I do very much advise that the vast majority of you rim-to-rim hikers pair the Bright Angel Trail with the North Kaibab Trail, regardless of whether you're crossing north to south or vice versa. But in all honesty, if you're prepared and you know what you're doing, then there's really no right or wrong itinerary. Now, if you've watched my rim-to-rim series, and I hope you have, you know that the last time I made the trek across the canyon, I did so without encountering a single mule, which was an aberration, because hiking with mules is almost a guarantee on longer hikes within the canyon. Generally, I've only crossed paths with mules when heading in the opposite direction. I mean, that's naturally the more likely scenario. But I was also moving pretty fast on this occasion, meaning that circumstances were reversed. I caught up with this group of mule riders and had to spend a fair amount of time traveling behind them, which is not my favorite place to be. But mules always have the right of way, so I waited. If you find yourself in this situation, don't attempt to pass the mule train or shortcut the trail. Wait for the group to stop and communicate to the party leader that you'd like to pass, and then follow their directions.
Hi.
Hi, any objections if I pass?
Yeah. You go ahead and just pass on this wall behind us.
Okay.
Also make note that passing is also effectively a soft commitment to continue outpacing the mule train. Shortly after passing the mules, I was pleasantly surprised to run into another herd of bighorn sheep. Only rather than traveling in the opposite direction like I had a few hours before, this time we were traveling in the same direction. Now, I was careful to let the sheep pass before I continued up the trail, and before I knew it, I was bringing up the rear almost as part of the herd with no one else around. I made sure to give them the space they needed, stopping when they stopped and continuing when appropriate. With so few people on the trail and amidst an uncommon calm, The Grand Canyon again demonstrated to me that this incredible landscape still has surprises to offer, even seasoned Grand Canyon hikers. My longtime viewers know that I particularly value my wildlife encounters. Whether condors, elk, deer, snakes, or lizards, the animals that call this sacred place home add a precious heartbeat to the landscape. Limit the noise you make and be respectful of the land and others on the trail, and who knows what animals might cross your path. The sheep and I traveled together for the better part of a mile before they suddenly shot up the canyon wall and we parted ways. Only moments later, I passed a raucous group of hikers heading down the trail, completely ignorant of the sheep they had scared away by treating the canyon like a rec hall. Now, I believe people should have an absolutely amazing time in the canyon. This is a park, after all, preserved for the benefit and enjoyment of people. But we've got to learn that national parks are different from other parks. There's a sacredness to all wild spaces, and we've got to find a balance that preserves these remarkable places and enhances the experience for everyone. National parks cannot be treated like a rec hall, concert, stadium, or theme park. I've heard some people compare certain national park experiences to watching a movie in the theater. I think it's a terrible comparison. But even in theaters, you are asked to silence your phone and remain quiet so as to not diminish the experience for others. And I'm of the opinion that a visit to a national park is infinitely more deserving of those basic courtesies than a trip to the movie theater. When people treat our parks like collection points on a road trip or like theme parks, it does harm and something priceless is lost. And like the rowdy hikers that frighten the sheep off the trail with their yelling, those causing the harm to our parks are too often ignorant of the damage they inflict. Other influencers do this all the time, but through their computers. They echo harmful and ignorant quote-unquote must-do checklists because the internet rewards them for it. But in doing so, they're actually sabotaging their followers and inflicting terrible harm on our parks and wild spaces. I'm going to give you the only must-dos you will ever need. Are you ready? Be safe, be prepared, be courteous to the land, wildlife, and your fellow travelers, slow down, and make memories that you'll cherish all your life. That's it. You can't do it all, regardless of what park you visit. No one can. Which is why influencers that share quote-unquote must-dos should never be taken seriously. And ironically, those who follow their advice and try to do it all often end up getting to experience less than people who slow down. If you visit with a checklist mentality, you'll capture a few fleeting moments of a mostly missed adventure. The real rewards, the ones that can change your life, await visitors who seek more than participation in online social rituals. The most successful travelers know when to ignore the internet. There are 2 rest houses and bathrooms between Havasupai Garden and the Bright Angel Trailhead. They're located near the 3-mile rest house and the 1.5-mile rest house. And I doubt that I need to decode those names for you, but just to be on the safe side, they are located approximately 1.5 miles and 3 miles from the Bright Angel Trailhead on the South Rim. In addition to bathrooms, both locations offer shade, water, and an emergency phone. But even with those amenities, exercise caution. Visiting a place like the Grand Canyon can be a bit like a starving person showing up to a banquet. There is so much to take in, so savor it, but be wary of biting off more than you can do. In the 1990s, access to the South Kaibab Trail, one of the park's most popular trails, was restricted and has remained so because too many people relied on rescue teams to bail them out. It would be very foolish to think that additional restrictions won't become necessary if park visitors don't outgrow the internet's siren songs and continue to strain and even endanger park staff and rescue teams. In my home state of Utah, state land managers, in a peak of breathtaking foolishness, ordered the access shaft of a popular cave destroyed after a series of emergency incidents and finally the tragic death of a caver who left behind a pregnant wife and small child. That tragedy was used as license by state land managers to destroy a precious natural resource. It's an act of vandalism I will never forget. And while I don't believe the Park Service would ever be so foolish, They might be forced to implement additional restrictions if emergency incidents become too abundant. And the welfare of rescue teams, exhausted by ill-prepared hikers, becomes a serious concern. Grand Canyon National Park has gained some infamy in the last few years for being the deadliest park in the United States. Now, sometimes accidents happen, and no one is at fault. It's the preventable tragedies that ought to concern us all. I've seen so many people reach this point and declare, never again. And honestly, it makes me sad. If someone is so underprepared to hike within the canyon that their dominant desire is to never do it again, I can't help but think that most of what makes the canyon priceless must have been totally wasted on someone who just wasn't ready for the challenge of life beneath the rim. Now, I'm not the fittest person on the planet. You don't have to be an immaculate physical specimen to explore the Grand Canyon. Only a couple of months before I captured this footage, I really screwed up my back. And I definitely wasn't in my peak physical shape, but I trained and prepared and made absolutely sure that I was ready for a 14-mile trek through the canyon. I've seen ultra runners and even experienced National Geographic adventurers get their butts handed to them by the canyon, which suggests to me that success has less to do with your physical prowess and everything to do with your humility and your respect for the canyon and your own abilities. Our parks need you. They need conscientious, respectful, capable explorers that will protect them from exploitation and won't endanger themselves or search and rescue teams by following bad online advice. If you followed the training, fueling, and gear guidance in my Rim to Rim series, you'll know how to get ready for life beneath the rim. The Grand Canyon is a wonder without rival. Visiting can be fulfilling beyond description. I can share videos, images, and what I've learned from years of exploring the canyon and other wild spaces. But the greatest rewards will come to you on your own adventure. My repeated visits to the Grand Canyon have dramatically changed my life for the better. If you're prepared, your visits can do the same for you. So until next time, this is Mike from At Home in Wild Spaces, wishing you a lifetime of responsible, life-changing adventures.